unveiling another information stream on you on this record. This should be a pretty easy one to do, and it was an easy one to research because this is a star-studded cast in front and behind the scenes. Almost Paradise by Mike Reno of Loverboy. Everybody working for the weekend. And Ann Wilson of Heart. Almost Paradise, number 21 from 22. Fantasy Playlist, June 4th, 1984. There are two people I wanted to talk about, but I've done so much research. There's so much to say about one person who wrote the screenplay of this movie, by the way. I'll just focus on him. But I'll mention, well, there's Dean Pitchford, the guy who wrote the screenplay of this movie, but Keith Olsen, who produced this album. Keith Olsen of the, yes, Talk Talk. He was the music. He was the bass player of group that did Talk Talk, Music Machine, late 66, early 67, one of the hardest records in the mid-60s. Keith Olsen was in that band. He was banging away on that bass. Talk Talk by the Music Machine. Call that one the early punk rock records, 10 years before God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols. Talk Talk by the Music Machine. That was a pretty big hit too back in winter of 66, 67. Boy, heating up those AM airways. Well, Keith Olsen later produced the Babies, producing things by heart. He's worked with a lot of people in the 70s and the 80s, and kind of more or less discovered Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. He recorded the demo and later produced the Buckingham Nicks album, which was critically acclaimed, not commercial success, but still critically acclaimed. And that was back in 1973, and that was before Buckingham Nicks and Stevie Nicks, they became members of Fleetwood Mac. But I'm going to steer away from Keith Olsen and talk about Dean Pitchford. Oh my goodness, a lot to unpack about Dean Pitchford. Here, this is one of the biggest forces behind the Footloose movie and soundtrack. This record, Almost Paradise, was written by Eric Carmen. He wrote the music to it. Dean Pitchford wrote the lyrics. This would not be the last time they collaborated. They collaborated on Eric Carmen's, one of his best songs, actually, as a solo artist. Remember Eric Carmen of the Raspberries, and then he did a solo thing, Made Me Lose Control, in the summer of 1988, written by Eric Carmen and Dean Pitchford. Well, they collaborated on this record, Almost Paradise. Dean Pitchford, boy, he's been nominated for 3 Grammys? 3 Grammys, no, 8 Grammys, 3 Oscars, nominated for 3 Oscars, 8 Grammys, and two Golden Globes. Actually, one Golden Globe, and one an Oscar. Golden Globe, really, the Golden Globe, not Golden Glove. Think about Michael Jackson and his gloves, because you think of 1984, you think of Michael Jackson as well. Boy, he got himself a dream job, like you wouldn't believe. When he attended Yale, a summer job, late 60s. He's from Hawaii, Dean Pitchford. He got a chance to update Hawaii on $5 and $10 a day, a travel guide, and later on another summer job, very, very significant. He was wanted thousands to audition in Greenwich Village for a place, a spot to act in the off-Broadway play Godspell, and he got the gig. He was one of the actors, and now this was during his senior year at Yale, dividing time between New Haven, Connecticut, but also moving to Manhattan so he could act in Godspell. God, I remember Day by Day. What a beautiful record. Nobody plays it anymore. Summer of 1972 by Godspell, but Dean Pitchford was in on that later on. Dean Pitchford, he wrote some songs. He teamed up with a composer, a songwriter named Michael Gore. Michael Gore, the younger brother of Leslie Gore. They wrote 13 songs for the Fame soundtrack. 3 of those songs were accepted, including, of course, the Fame by Irene Cara, but a great disco record they wrote by Linda Clifford called Red Light. Funk and disco, great record. Went to #1 on the dance charts, number 41 on Billboard's Hot 100. So now we get to Footloose. Dean Pitchford came up with the concept. 1979. He read a newspaper article about a city in Oklahoma, a small city in Oklahoma called Elmore City. They lifted the ban on dancing, on public dancing, that was enforced for 80 years, that had been enforced since the late 19th century, and they lifted it. And even went to Elmore City to do some more research for a screenplay, which was eventually accepted by Paramount. And boy, the music, let's talk about the soundtrack. He was all over the movie. He was all over the soundtrack. Co-wrote this song, Almost Paradise, with Eric Carmen. He co-wrote Holding Out for the Hero by Bonnie Tyler. Co-wrote that with Jim Steinman. Got that Jim Steinman production touch on that record too. Let's Hear It for the Boy. Dean Pitchford, he wrote that with Tony or Tom or Tony Snow. I can't remember the guy's first name, but he co-wrote that. Co-wrote Dancing in the Sheets. He co-wrote Footloose. He co-wrote the soundtrack with Kenny Loggins. Do you remember a song, Fall of 1984? Night Tracks was all over this video. I'm Free. I'm Free by Kenny Loggins off of Footloose. Lost 45, co-written by Dean Pitchford. Co-wrote this record, Almost Paradise, which I guess would be the love theme from Footloose. Number 21, Mike Reno and Ann Wilson with Almost Paradise. Up one from 22 on my fantasy playlist, June 4th, 1984.